It'd be great if I was also on the screen too when we got started, but hey, glitches happen, right?
Yeah.
So, welcome to another Operation Separation. I'm your host, Shell Shapiro, founder of Shell Station. This week, we've got an amazing topic, an amazing guest. We will be talking about tracking yourself. And I have Chip Green here with me to dive in on that a little bit. So before we get started, just a quick reminder for anyone, whether you're new here or you've been here before, please feel free to drop comments into the chat. It may, if we don't pop it up on the screen during this session, we will make sure to go back and answer every single comment, no matter how big or small. Please, if you like what you're hearing, you're seeing, follow Shell Station on YouTube and LinkedIn for more ways to separate yourself. And whew, let's get started, shall we? Chip, welcome to Operation Separation. It's a pleasure to have you here. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself before we talk about tracking yourself?
Well, I'm Chip Green. I'm from Cheyenne, Wyoming. I work for a company called GPRS. What we do is we scan subsurface looking for any kind of utilities and anything in concrete. And right now I'm working on being a writer. So if you ever looked at my LinkedIn post, you'll see a lot of my stories, trying to develop more stories so that I can get some of my books published, help other people write, and have 6 beautiful kids and just working with some good people like Yenny Longren and Shell here, just making life better.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And I love that you're very multifaceted. Like you're not just like doing the one thing for your job. You're also a writer. You're like exploring different paths to self-discovery and what that could possibly look like. So now that you have been on LinkedIn for some time and you're building up your network and working with several supportive people to help you find your way, I understand you're also like a military guy or former military guy. So
Yes.
where does tracking yourself come from? Like that idea of tracking. And you're also a lover of the dictionary and words. So this tracks.
This definitely tracks. It's one of those, hey, I subscribe to dictionary.com, love that word of the day. Um, so I went to OCS in Georgia. I got out of the Army as a captain, at least in the reserves. And so in all the training, you'd always hear our sergeants or our officers say, they'd give us an instruction to be like, hey, are you tracking? And, I started thinking like, okay, what does that mean? And so it just came to be like, hey, you know what? Hey, I understand what's going on. And so now it's just kind of like part of my everyday verbiage. Like, I understand what's going on. I'm tracking. I'm following what you're doing, following what you're saying, everything. And so tracking yourself comes back to, being more self-aware of what you're doing and also what you're doing with others. Just kind of more self-awareness would probably be a good way to explain it.
Yeah. And it comes down to like understanding where you've been so that you can get where you want to go, right? Like, so you track your
Exactly.
progress, you track your growth, you track your interactions with everyone that you surround yourself with. And so it becomes more than just the word tracking and understanding. It becomes like the awareness of self and the different circumstances and situations that you navigate your way through. So from military to married life to being an author to being on LinkedIn, all the things. What exactly are you working on right now to continue tracking yourself and your progress and your growth?
So my coach is Jenny Langren. She's in Sweden. She told me that the correct pronunciation is Jenny Langren, which I like to call her that. She was telling me that a lot of her clients are in English, so she doesn't get a chance to speak Swedish very much. But anyway, several months ago, we had a free. She was offering free sessions, kind of like an assessment. And I was going through this idea of like low confidence, no vision, no clarity, no mission of what I wanted to do. It's like chaff in the wind, if you will. And so working with her, she's like, hey, you know what? We can get. I want to bring you up to where I'm at because I'm still on a journey. I'm not going to do it for you. I'm going to just kind of help you along. It's a journey of self-love, kind of reconnect with myself, align with myself, and just learn to be myself. Not really. It's a great journey because you get to separate yourself from, just I'm unburdening myself. I no longer really care what anybody thinks about me unless you're important and I care about your opinion. If not, I can say adios. So I'm just continuing
Yeah.
that self-love process and just self-improvement.
Yeah, and I love that you've worked on your ability to block and bless, like, and remove people from your life that are not necessarily bringing you up, or even being supportive as you go along your journey, whatever that ends up looking like for you. So I love that you've taken the time to reconnect with yourself to figure those things out. And Jenny is fantastic at what she does.
She is.
And part of the work that you've done with her, you were telling me previously, was pulling out your core values and the things that are really important to you. And those words that you shared with me, I definitely saved them because I want to be able to come back to them, right? They were connection, understanding, personal freedom, exploration, and humor. Now I took that a little bit, and as you know, I like talk about anchors and like things that ground you too. And we were also previously talking about um, anagrams, like word things like
Yes.
that, letters that can spell out something but also be a word themselves. And so I did that for your name, and let's see if it tracks, because some of the letters I was like, I don't want to just completely substitute one word for something else completely unless it makes sense. So here's what I loosely came up with, and if you have a better word for it, let's swap it out. So
Okay.
your name is Chip, and we'll dive more into your name in a second. But the acronym that I came up with, did I say anagram before? I
Yep.
meant acronym. You knew what I meant. Um, is connection. So I kept that the same. Humor, instead of understanding and personal freedom, or instead of personal freedom, I put independence. And then I kind of like used understanding and exploration as perception. So it's the perception one. It was the P one for me. And I didn't want to just say personal freedom because that was two words. And I was like, is there a better way to say that? So I came up with connection, humor, independence, and perception. So how does that track with you?
I'd say it works pretty well because let me dive in real quick into how Jenny kind of helps us get, at least me and probably the rest of our clients, get to their core values.
Yeah.
It's because I've always been a thinker. It's like, how does this feel? How does this think? Does it make sense? If I've never had the ability to say, oh, I feel good about this. It feels right. I have a bad feeling. That's never really been in my repertoire until her. So she gave me a list of like all of these little categories and different words, and she's like, okay, just go down the list. Don't think about it. Don't be like, okay, that looks like me. It's like, just sit there, mull over each word, and just feel. And so that's how I came up with those. Like, those feel me. Those are completely me. And perception, that's how we sense things. Another word for feel.
Yeah.
So it works really well, especially independence. I like that, how it works for personal freedom.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
it works, tracks well.
I'm glad that I was able to kind of reconfigure that a little bit for you, because it was definitely swimming around in my mind after our last chat, and I didn't want to take away from the good words that you had pulled out from your like self-awareness journey and the work that you've done with Jenny. But if we can make a more comprehensive word out of it, then all the better, right? Because it's
Yeah.
easier to like remember what those things stand for, especially if it's the letters of your name. So that brings me to my next question, which is something that I know we talked a little bit about as well. Where does the name Chip come from?
Good question. So I'll just reiterate this story. So we'll do this for the viewers. So I was born George Albert Green, It's a family name named after my great uncle, who was named after his father, and so on and so forth. And family, and there was a George on just big family name on my mother's side. And so one time we were at a family reunion, and my mother was like, "Hey, George, come here." About 4 or 5 Georges looked at her and said, "What?" Older men, whatever. And then she's like, "Nah, we need some kind of differentiation, something unique." So my great uncle George, he was my great grandfather nicknamed everybody, and so to carry on with that tradition, my mother went to him and said, "Hey, can you give him a nickname?" And he's like, "Well, let's see. He's a chip off the old block, so let's just call him Chip." And in the time period I grew up, they're both Georges and Chips had so many affiliations. Curious George, George of the Jungle, all that stuff. Anything Chip. So I'd alternate between years of like, which one am I, until I just decided, okay, you know what? I'm just Chip. I'm just going to learn to deal with the teasing, but that's who I am. And so we made that part of my legal name when I was about 13, and I've been Chip ever since.
I would actually argue that that kind of suits you better than George. Like, I know it's a family name, it's an honor, it's a tradition to carry that on as part of like your family. But Chip is pretty fitting, especially now that we've created the words that go with that encompass you. And
I can't argue because I agree.
yeah,
My personal belief is like, okay, simply like, oh, what are you gonna name your baby when he or she's born? Oh, we're just gonna look and see what she looks like. I don't really call any kind of software that says, okay, with these facial features, you look like a Sarah or a John. It's like I have no idea what that looks like, but you can become the name. Because I agree, it's like I have become Chip. George was just given to me, but I became Chip.
yeah.
And as Jenny's even putting out on LinkedIn lately, it's like the power of becoming. So
Yeah.
right now it's like what we're doing is like, this is the power of becoming. Track yourself to become who you want to become. And that's a great journey.
Yeah. And that ties in to personal branding as well, which is something that I've I've gone in on during these lives quite a bit. For me, like, my full name is Michelle, like my full first name. And there's so many Michelle Shapiros in the world. And I've been based in New York City for the better part of my life. There's so many Michelle Shapiros in New York City. Like, not even take away the world, take away the United States, take away New York, New Jersey, the whole East Coast, whatever. Just in New York City alone, there are so many that I get asked so many questions, even just going to the doctor, like, well, which one are you? Can you tell me the last 4 of your social? What's your birth date? What's your address? What's your phone number? And yes, you do have to do like a little bit of confirming to validate who you are when you go to like, especially a doctor's appointment, or like even are on the phone with something that's legal. But I needed a way to differentiate myself. And so as I've gone through becoming Shell, and encompassing that, it fits with my, not just my branding, but like, it's who I've become. It's how I want people to know me. It's like my niece and nephew, like, I'm Aunt Shell to them. I'm not Aunt Michelle. I'm Aunt Shell, because it's the name, it's the persona, it's everything that stands for me. Now, I don't have each of the letters of Shell broken down into a different word, but like, I am a shell through and through, like a seashell kind of shell. Like, I am, like, I can be a very like hardened exterior, but then once you get underneath it all, like, there's like the softer stuff on the inside. Or like, if you think about, I'm going to go into like very water related things and all that a shell represents, right? If you look at, not necessarily a conch shell, a nautilus shell, it's goes in cylinder, it's like a sphere.
Spiral.
A spiral, yes. So it's kind of like a spiral staircase, but that grows, and it's very, if you break one apart, it's very structured on the inside. And that's exactly me. Like, I am on this journey. It's not necessarily a complete, like, perfect spiral, but like, I am on this journey for myself. And I now have all this structure around me, this support, this network of like that branch off in all the different ways to help support me as a whole. And that's also what I help other people with. So the name is more than just Shell, Chelle. Like, I'm also a Shell, Shell. And also that's where Shell Station comes from. Partly, there is a story behind that. But like, what's in a name is so important, right? And I love that you've encompassed and become Chip. You're still George, but you are known and
Just for legal purposes.
yeah.
I like how you said that, your shell, the spiral, everything. It's like, if I was to go on my connection core value, I'd have to say that, there's different kinds of chips, everything's been chipped off and I absorb that to become me, but I also chip off something of me and leave with somebody else. So there's a whole lot of chipping going on.
Yeah.
On
And
occasion, I'll have a chip on my shoulder. My best friend, or at least my grandfather's name was Dale, so we always got Chip and Dale. So, I mean,
that's exactly where I was about to go with that, which was a great show growing up. So there's
still is.
nothing wrong with that, like being, related to a Chip and Dale or like relating to that cartoon. But also it makes me like, we've talked about like I sing the theme songs in my head every time I
Uh-huh.
like think of something like that. And as a military person, but also as like a project manager, as somebody that like builds teams and helps other people to grow themselves, are you also kind of like a rescue ranger? Like, you go on missions to like
Yeah, so I'm not exactly a project manager in like the modern day sense. I lead a whole team, but through my job, if I scan concrete or just we're looking for safety, because the main thing is we want to make sure that if a construction crew needs to drill into concrete, they're not going to hit something that could really just damage themselves or anything else. So that is a project, and I'm the manager of it. I'm supposed to see something that they're not aware of and help solve it. But it doesn't mean I'm not a team builder, team leader. We've talked about how a leader, it's a title has nothing to do with that. It's just a glorified position of power.
yeah.
And what somebody got there. But I mean, the leader is just the one who takes the lead, cares about others, builds them up, as you said. And I have done that in regardless of any position of authority or not. Just trying to build up others as who I am. Just use
Yeah.
whatever influence I have, see in them what they may not see in themselves. And it's amazing how many people I talk to, either online, in real life, whatever. It's like how much we just don't know about ourselves.
And that brings it right back to tracking yourself and how
Yeah.
important it is.
And it's like, well, I can't love somebody until I've loved myself. I've had a hard time. So here's something we didn't cover in the 90s. Basically, from about 1991 until about 2001, every direct male line on my father's side passed away, including my father. So my grandfather, my paternal grandfather, died in about 2001. My father died in 97, and then my great grandfather died in the early 90s. I have no brothers, and so it was like I felt like a lot of me just shut down. Just I got used to anybody coming close to me just leaving. So I was like, well, what's the point of going out there? 25 years later, after my father passed away, I'm like, you know what? I think it's really high time I learned to really know how to feel again. Not shut off, but actually, I think I just kind of put it to sleep, mentally dormant.
Yeah.
So I actually kind of put a lot of that into my latest story on LinkedIn called The Portal. So for anybody who hasn't read it yet, it's kind of like just a fantasy version of what I'm going through. Not
Yeah.
everything, but I think, and I also think it's something we can all relate to, which is why I like Rise is something we can all relate to. one way or another.
For you're right. For anybody who hasn't read this story, like you should definitely check it out. Like it's written really well, and I know you've been putting out little pieces at a time, so you're not just like dropping the whole thing. Honestly, it works really well because it makes people want to come back and read the next bit. Like just tease them a little bit, give us more. But it's also like an exploration, a deep dive into yourself. You shut that off. You went dormant for however long. And for all intents and purposes, you got off track. So you weren't tracking during those moments because you just shut down. And so now you're getting back on track. You've been back on track. You've been figuring out what that track needs to look like for you.
Yeah. You can even say like my train got just got stuck on the track. You know, it's like,
it was
we're out of
completely
steam.
derailed.
Yeah. I was going to say derailed, but it's like, well, it's another track. But I mean, it was just there, just stuck. Didn't really care to go anywhere until it's like, hey, you know what? Let's get some new coal. Let's fire up those engines. Let's go somewhere, It's like we went all over the place growing up, and let's do that again. Because that was part of the exploration. I loved going out and doing stuff. Love it.
I'm going to take it in a totally different place right now because one, I have a song going through my head right now that I kind of want to sing, but I don't have a good voice. But also like, how often do you go on the train? Like have you ever been on a train that has actually gone off the tracks? Like literally. I won't stay on this part for long. It was just where my mind went. So I thought I'd ask.
My brother-in-law does do trains, but I've been on like those little kiddie ride trains at the zoo. That's about as far as that's gone.
Did you ever play with toy trains when you were growing up?
Oh yeah, I had model trains, but then I just kind of lost interest in it. But yeah, I loved it. It's like amazing how each little grade, each little curve could disrupt something. Everything just has to be well laid out, well built, or you're going nowhere or you're derailed. So it's like, how do we plan ahead? So I mean, that's how you can track yourself, is how are you planning your future track?
Now, with the same toy train model in mind, because now this may relate to your adult life or somebody else may need to hear it. When you build your track, are you somebody that's building it in like a perfect like circle, oval, like everything like just nicely connects? Or are you somebody that like it's got like a circle over here and an 8 loop over here, and like you go over a bridge, you go under the underpass? Like, or are you just like weaving it kind of like an interconnected highway?
Transcontinental Railroad. You have to go anywhere you want. I can't just keep coming around. I have to, because that gets boring. You have to.
It's comfortable.
Yeah. What's the point of being comfortable? It's like, yeah, you can, what you're going to do today. Some people like that. I did to a point, but it's like, hey, you know what? What am I going to do today? What challenges do I get to accept? Where, whether it was the Union Pacific, I can't remember the exact brands of the Transcontinental Railroad, but it's like, hey, you know what? We're going to meet. We're going to go over so many different types of landscapes. We're going to build tunnels. Like, we have to build tunnels. We're just going to go across the plains. It doesn't matter. Some areas will have beautiful vistas, animals, like Hell on Wheels always got to hunt the buffalo and just the other things. And the ones coming from California, all the mountains they had to traverse until, that's a journey in itself. The journey, it's a journey building the track. The effort to get there. It's like, how I'm laying out my track. I think we kind of forget that part of the journey is where we lay it.
Yeah. And sometimes what that track looks like needs to change.
Yeah. It's like that.
Like, as you build it, if you will, then you may need, say, like, I'm thinking about going in this direction, and then something else presents itself and you're like, actually, no, I need to divert and go over here. And so you track correct, you course correct a little bit to like relay your track. Yeah.
because as we all know, a train isn't just like one lane. It's like so many switch tracks going back and forth. You know, how many routes can you get to the same place? There's a game called Ticket to Ride. I mean, the whole point is like, how do you get from point A to point B? And there's various ways you can take. Some could be longer, some be shorter. As long as you end up at where you want to go, just enjoy the ride.
Yeah, I'm a big believer too that there's I don't want to say a million ways, but there's always more than one way to do everything, and there's always more than one way to get where you want to go. So I love that you've been figuring out what that looks like for you, and it may not be the same as what it looked like a year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. However long it takes because it's always growing and changing. So yeah, I love that you're figuring it out for yourself. That's the personal freedom.
Yeah. I was like, when you're looking for a job, there's always a question, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Because I know they're looking for the long-term commitment. Like, do you want to see yourself here? It's like, I don't know. I mean, I can't exactly become CEO in 5 years if I want to stay there. Because, exactly, things can change. But where I see myself at that moment in 5 years, sure, I'd like to be a lot higher up than I am now. Right now, I would like to be a full-time author. I'd like to actually have my own publishing company. I'd actually like to have my own audiobook studio. Just let the author, anybody who wants to self-publish or have their book published, like, hey, you know what? Come in and let's explore your story. Just tell your story.
Yeah.
We all have a good one that needs to be told one way or another.
Well, and as you've been laying this track work for these things to come to fruition, you are also developing your strategy. You have the foresight to figure things out for yourself. And if you don't, you have a good, strong network to be able to pull in people and pick their brain, if you will, to make sure that you're going in the right direction, doing the best thing that makes sense. Right.
Yeah. It's we talked about how, even Walt Disney, right? He was a good artist, but I at least know the guy's name was Ub, who actually refined Mickey's design. But Walt was really good at the stories, and he brought in all these other people to help manage the company and create it. Same with Henry Ford. The guy could build an engine, but he wasn't. He brought in all the special people who knew how to build that team. It's the network.
Yeah.
Because we all need, even the engineer's not alone. If he's driving that train into the station, you got your baggage handlers, you got your conductor, you got the guys who are going to fill up the water. He's not alone. He's ultimately responsible for the train, yes, but he's not allowed to clear the track. It's that whole company's effort. Especially if it's hey, I need somebody to go up there and switch the track. The network is a major part of it, whether it be people or the destination we go.
Or the physical track.
Yep, definitely.
So many ways to track this. I will always make a joke out of it. Even it's a very serious thing and it's very important, but there's so many ways to poke fun at it where it also still is.
Well, it's right there.
Humor.
There's a humor, exactly. It's
what we do.
Okay, so let's kind of backtrack, if you will, to my name and how many different Chips there are. You grow up and everybody's like, oh, hey, Chip, where's Dale? Or you eat those buffalo chips, just anything where kids think they're clever. It gets kind of old when the kid is now your same age and use the same joke. Where's Dale? I don't know. Well, like I said, my grandfather Dale died. And so well, he's dead. He passed away. So it's no longer, so that just just be quiet. So I actually issue a challenge. I just like to poke fun at what they're trying to make fun of. I issue a challenge, come up with something very original, make me laugh. I definitely prize people's witticisms and creativity. It's how can you make fun of my name? Nope, that just doesn't work. So you got to poke fun of yourself. If I slip in the rain and it's just funny, it's it was funny. can't fault people for laughing. It's just it was funny. You just gotta go with it, laugh.
Oh, I'm super clumsy, so I just poke fun of myself all day long because I'm just covered in black and blue marks. I mean, I'm not like, and nobody's beating me, like, but I'm clumsy and I stumble over things, or like I trip, or like I bang my leg against the dresser, or whatever it is, and I'm just like 2 hours later, 2 days later, 2 weeks later, when did I get that? It just happens so often that I just don't even know. But like, if I can poke fun at things that are happening to myself, like it makes it takes the pressure off. One, because then you've already done it, so anything anybody else could say is never going to be as bad. And two, like it just makes it more lighthearted of a thing. Like maybe I did bump myself and I like really stung, but if I'm like laughing about it and able to be like, oh yeah, I do that all the time, or like whatever the thing is, it just makes it not as bad.
Yeah.
And if we can make things easier for ourselves, then yeah, find the humor in things.
Have you ever seen the movie Patton or familiar with General George Patton?
I'm not a history person, so I'm going to say no.
Yeah, I am. So George C. Scott played George Patton in 60s, 70s. So after the Allies defeat the Nazis, there's a dinner where they're trying to toast each other. And George Patton will not toast a Russian. And this is just, this is a huge effrontery to the Russian, like how dare you, blah, 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 blah. And so the Russian leader is talking to his subordinate, and the translator's like, and Patton's like asking the translator, so what did he say? He's like, well, he thinks you're a son of a bitch. And Patton just starts to chuckle, like, well, I think he's a son of a bitch too. I can toast that. Raises his glass. Well, here's from one son of a bitch to another. The Russian commander guy is like, I'll toast to that too. And they had a laugh.
Yeah.
So they could at least agree on a laugh of what to laugh about. And that's again where humor can lead to connection, to understanding. They understood that each one was a son of a bitch. And they laughed about it.
Yeah.
They hated each other in reality, but we can have a laugh over it.
Yeah. And look, we may not agree on all things all the time and agree to disagree. Like we can both be right and we can both be wrong about things. And everybody has their own truth. There's my truth, there's your truth, and then there's what the actual truth is and what other people see the truth as. And none of them are ever right or wrong. They just are. But like in those moments where we can agree to disagree, or even where we can just disagree and just let it be, there's always still something that we can agree upon. Like we can agree to disagree. We can disagree, but then be okay leaving it where it is, even if we don't agree to it. Like we can both just walk away. So where am I going with this? Like it's the tracking, but it's the tracking in terms of all right, I'm holding firm to what I believe, whether you believe that too or not.
Mm-hmm.
And being aware of that, being aware of where you're able to know yourself enough to walk away to is sometimes really powerful too.
Yeah. We shouldn't and don't have to change to fit in with people. I mean, sure, for sake of argument, there are certain situations where you can't necessarily be yourself 100%, but that doesn't mean you have to change your boundaries, your rules. You just may have to hold back certain things. But, we never should change to fit in with people. Okay, if it's like a one-time deal, maybe, just to get a deal, fine. That'll benefit both of you. And then you're probably never going to see the person again. But if it's a continual thing, you're compromising your principles, your boundaries, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
That's that self-awareness, tracking yourself is like, okay, am I actually being on my true self in this situation? Am I surrendering too much to get what I want? And is it really worth it? Because am I going to have to sort of live this lie if I get this deal with this person I really just don't like? I mean, if the answer is no to any of those questions, just walk away. Live with yourself instead of, hey, I got this great deal. It was a draconic deal, but hey, I got it.
Yeah. And that's why no means next opportunity in my book.
Oh, there you go. There's that acronym.
Yeah, like you can just walk away and go on to the next thing. You don't have to like take everything that comes your way. Um, one of the other things that we had talked about previously, you and I, was about tracking your principles and the
Yes.
PLE version, not the PAL. Although certainly there's that too, but like I think that's related to things that we've brought up here today as well, when it comes to tracking your principles, because these are the things that you believe in. These can be your values. Like value and principle, I don't know if they're completely interchangeable, but like it's still they're things that are important to you. They're things that you are driven by and you stand firm with. Maybe principles could fairly even be like combined, attributed, can't think of the exact word, but like with boundaries, like these things go hand in hand. Like they sit well together. And so when you're aware of your principles and the things that you will and won't do, your boundaries and like where your firm yes and your firm no are, like everything else is going to track the way that it needs to track.
Yes.
Yeah. There's a lot to unpack here with tracking yourself.
There is. I just know this is like, no matter what, you have to be authentic. You have to give an authentic yes, an authentic no. What are I can't remember the exact thing Jenny says, but it's like, what are our actions going to do for that? Is somebody, there's so many times, even adults, like people even older than me, they're like, hey, will you do this? And it's something I don't want to do. I have no reason to do it. I'm like, oh, come on. I'm like, no. Find any way. It's like, okay, I might give a 2-strike rule instead of a 3. It's like, the fact that you're not agreeing to this, then I have no reason to be around you. I don't care what I get out of it. It's not worth the fact that you're not listening to me. I'm compromising myself too much. I mean, I got to do that with my kids. Like, no, you want to drive? You didn't accept my no, so no.
Yeah.
Like
you're not respecting the fact that my no is not going to change the more you keep asking it.
Oh yeah. In fact, for me, it's more firm. It's like, no. It becomes more firm.
Sure. So let's talk more about your writing for a second.
Sure.
As you're putting more of your stories out on LinkedIn and stuff, have you gotten any feedback from any of the people that interact with it? Like, have you had to like go back and tweak things based on people's feedback? Like, where are you at with your writing? And how is that tracking for you?
I get from a lot of friends, I get a lot of good feedback. I'm trying to include more full-time writers. Like, I would love to welcome their feedback, especially if it'll move on to, like, it'll evolve into something more publishing instead of just like a little excerpt on there. Some real authors are like, hey, I really like this. It's uplifting. Everybody has a good comment. Some have asked, do I write based on personal experience or more imagination? It's a little bit of both for me. Like, I don't know how many people know this about like James Bond. When Ian Fleming wrote that, first off, he created the name just after his neighbor, the most boring name he could come up with, but all of the exploits were his. How he envisioned himself when he was in the British intelligence. But everything else he just kind of created. So I mean, I think in all of my stories, there's a semblance of myself in it. I mean, we have to. But like in a lot of those stories I want to create, it's all going to be in my imagination. So for one story I've been working on for honestly over a decade. Just haven't really got anything out on it. I love different cultures, and I'm trying to find a way to use different portals from different cultures from different times to come and save a kingdom in peril. Actually, I have started now thinking about it, but it's like you right, and I actually want to create at least a trilogy of that where some cultures, like a Roman blacksmith, a Native American tracker warrior, a Japanese ninja, they all have certain attributes. I mean, and throw all of them into a certain light, even an Egyptian priest.
Yeah.
All of these different cultures just like be authentic to it, and then he of course bring like Vikings. Just like wow, because I like to be as historically accurate as possible, but not to the point of, it loses point on the story. But I mean, we have so much good cultures that we don't appreciate, and the whole point of this is like, hey, look at all these. It's an introduction to all these cultures, and what we can all accomplish together. And
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing this right, but as far as I know, it's a Lakota word called Akasita, which basically means warrior society from a Crazy Horse biography. So I mean, that it's things like that, things that we can all benefit from and learn from. I don't write things just to what we call brain candy. Just like pass for the night. Oh, cool. Story, read it. It's like I want to leave a lasting impression. I
Yeah.
want to be that guy person talks about.
Yeah, and you're drawing on existing cultures
Yeah.
and their beliefs and way of doing things in order to bring your stories to life. So the stories themselves are like fantasy and like they're made up, but like the things that they're doing, the cultures, the way that they live in those different time periods and locations is very much real.
Yeah.
So maybe this exists already, maybe it doesn't. Is there a place where people can read more of your stories?
Right now, it's strictly on LinkedIn. I'm working on a way to. That is a good question, and I think you've kind of given me the next step of what I want to do. Is I actually probably want to create a website, just maybe put short stories out there because I'm very limited on how much I can put into the main body of my LinkedIn post, and it's continued in the comments. And so, it's like the first comment, so you'd have to like scroll through everybody else's comments just to read the end of it.
Well,
And
one thing I might think about doing instead of like maybe a website is the next step. Maybe it's not. Throwing this out there. Have you considered maybe like creating a newsletter for yourself on your LinkedIn page, and then they could be that way then you post them as like articles under that newsletter umbrella, and that way people can just find them all there.
I think that's
And
something
or
we should get offline
use
and
the
talk about.
featured. Yeah, we could also use the featured section on your profile to showcase some of your story posts, and then you would take the posts that you've done in the past and feature the most prominent ones, or like the ones that have the most meaning. You could rotate them out on a regular basis if you wanted to like, okay, these are the latest stories, here's what I want you to see. So I think there's ways to like showcase them and make it easier for people to find them all in one spot just within LinkedIn itself before you even consider going to and creating a web page. Use what you already have.
You've definitely given me some food for thought. I was not even aware of those features.
Well, that's definitely a rabbit hole that we can go down together. And like I could show you how to do all those things. I myself do not have a newsletter, but like I have written articles on them, and I've had many discussions about how to use them. I can't do all the things at once on LinkedIn for myself, and so I've made the intentional decision to not have one yet. But certainly that's something that you could do with yours. And if I can't answer your newsletter question on LinkedIn, then I have plenty of experts that also know how to do it that are doing it really, really well on LinkedIn. So yeah, that's definitely something that we can talk about, and gives people the opportunity to be able to like find them as they're going through your profile a little bit. Especially if they've maybe missed the post, an original post, but maybe there's a story in particular that you've, alluded them to, or that they can go back and be like, all right, I really resonated with this. Or like, hey, do you have any more to this story? Like, what's the next piece? And you kind of keep people on the hook for a little bit more.
I do get some direct messages asking, hey, when's the next one coming out? And on my last chapter of the portal, some of my friends are like, oh, that's a good ending. I'm like, we're not done yet. We still got a few more chapters. Still got a few more core values to go through.
Yeah. And does it make a difference? Because I know you talked about, I didn't mean for this to turn into a strategy session, but hey, like I have questions and we're here. I know we talked about earlier in this session, we were talking about you wanting to have your own publishing company and like audio books and different things like that. Have you ever like videotaped or recorded yourself reading your stories? Because maybe there's an opportunity for that on LinkedIn with like a LinkedIn Live, like maybe they don't have to be completely scheduled out. Maybe that's something that just like, oh, well, I have it ready to go. I feel like sharing this, and you can go live and read it to an audience. And then that lives there like a collection of things too.
I would definitely do that more when I create more colorful characters, because right now they're all more like your white bread. Because kind of going back to the cultures, it's like we all have different accents, we all have different sayings, and personally, I love, for the heck of it, personally, I prefer to be doing my own accents for my own stories and making sure that my character sounds exactly how I portray him to be. Whether this is Russian or something else, I do not personally know. But I like to create.
Was that Russian or Scottish?
Sometimes they cross. I've actually been doing a little bit of a Scotch-Irish accent on occasion too.
Because it had very like some undertones of like Jamie from Outlander.
I've been watching that, and he's got some good ones. Ken.
Which, yeah, is another way to say that you track something.
I lost you. That's the one you got to be doing, Ken.
The other thing that I wanted to call attention to, which is not Outlander, was that you said you've been like encouraging the feedback from real authors. Why are you not calling yourself a real author? What defines them as real authors?
You're actually published. Published, not like, hey, I actually have it. Somebody bought it. It's out there. So it's.
So now you're just a writer, and then when you're published, you're an author.
I'm trying to be an author. I mean, I'm the author of my own life. That aspect of it. But yeah, right now I'm a writer. I actually want to put author on there. That. So yes, that's the differentiation between a writer and an author. Is one's published, one's not.
And did you make that distinction, or is that an actual? So what's
a little bit of both?
What's stopping you from actually like saying that you're an author now? I know you made the distinction that you're not published yet.
No, that's fine.
But like, could that not be like the catalyst or like motivation of like, if you say you are something, then you become it?
As opposed
to, well, I'm not there yet. And again, didn't mean for this to be go down a rabbit hole strategy session, but we're here now and I have the questions.
Well, first off, I don't believe anybody's just a one-trick pony. Historical example, maybe a little tangent, is Benjamin Franklin. Look at everything on his resume, if you will. Scientist, diplomat, postal carrier, whatever it was. The one thing he never stopped putting on there was he was a printer. Job number one. Everything else just kind of fell on the wayside after that. So for me, I would still kind of prefer to be called a writer. An author is, it's you write a book or something. So that's kind of another distinction. But a writer, I can write books, I can write essays, I can write scripts.
Gives you more personal freedom.
Exactly. I don't limit myself. I don't just want to be an author. Because technically you could even call J.K. Rowling a writer, not just an author, because she's had a lot of influence on her own scripts for the movies. She's contributed to that. So you're still a writer. And I mean, she even writes for her own blog, that still counts. So yeah, I don't want to just narrow it down to books. It's an ultimate dream, but I don't just want to limit it myself either. So I think that's why I put I'm a writer before an author. I just wanted something published, yes, but I'm a writer.
That tracks. That's valid. Okay, so I'm gonna try to recap all the things that we've talked about today, and I probably will miss one or two because we've touched on a lot of different ways to track yourself.
It's normally how a conversation goes with me.
Yeah. Well, we hit all the different points, and then some. So we're talking about being self-aware and the way that you use your words and interact with other people and build them up. And we talked about team building. We talked about building your track, and what happens when you need to divert or you get sidetracked or you redirect and go in different directions. We talked about backtracking in that same vein of what that could look like physically on your path. We talked about shutting down and what that looks like. So many things. We talked about branding and how that came to fruition with your name being what you embody and the words, your core values, and how you break that down. We've also now turned it into a living embodiment of the name Chip. How can anyone tuning in, what do you think is the most important thing that somebody needs to do in order to track themselves better? Whether they're already doing it, whether they haven't started yet, what can somebody do to be more self-aware and track themselves better?
Become aligned with yourself. Connect with yourself. Because, again, the portal is about reconnecting with yourself. Awakening what's dormant, finding your vision, reawakening your passion. The person... So part of the story is the character goes inside. The portal is a gateway to inside himself. Like an imaginary cavern that has... I'm not going to give too much away, but it's his little guide in there is kind of the goddess of passion, helping him reawake what his passion is and how to do that. And when he reemerges from the portal, he's who he always should have been. And that's a major change. And so part of the point of the portal afterwards when he's out, it's not just how he's living, it's how he's helping others too. People who have been bullies for no reason, not them true selves, have all of a sudden changed. Not because he's talked to them exclusively, but his energy. I'm definitely into the energy thing in my own way. His energy is so positive, just because it's his true self. Everybody feels comfortable to be their true selves around him, except those who feel threatened. And I mean, if we're not able to be our true selves, we're going to attract the wrong people. They can see that. We'll be easily manipulated. We're being our authentic self. We're in control of what we want to do. That's the best way to be self-aware.
Yeah.
Is you're aware, you are your true self. You know everything you want to do, and you're present for yourself. You show up for yourself. So that'd probably be the best way to track yourself, is just connect and align with yourself.
Yeah. And you brought up another good point about tracking your energy. Yep. These days I follow what feels good. I'm very introverted, but I'm the most outgoing introverted person ever. But I still get very drained in certain situations. And so I do definitely pay attention to my energy levels. my physical energy levels and what things feel like for me. If I need to take a nap, I go take a nap. I'll recharge and then I'll come back better. Actually, depending on the time of the day, because if I nap earlier in the day, then I will probably come back. If I nap too late in the day, then I'm like, I might as well just roll this into my night, and then the rest of the day is done. And both of those things are okay. Right. So I follow my energy. I follow what feels good. And in a positive, negative way, the things that don't feel good, the things that feel negative to me, and that could be like what I'm absorbing from other people as well as my own negativity. Like I try to leave those things behind as quickly as possible these days, because I want to stay with what feels good. And so tracking your energy is a great way to make sure that we're staying aligned with ourselves.
Because when you're constantly aligned, like what? Think of yourself as a battery. If you put that battery in wrong and it's not aligned with the chargers, first off, the machine's not going to work, and possibly could even drain itself. So I mean, if you're constantly getting, if we hook ourselves up to like the alternator, then we're going to stay constantly charged. If everything is properly aligned and properly connected, even, yeah, we're not going to have to worry about it.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, I'm tired because I've just given my all today.
Yeah. I mean, to that same point, I've burnt out pretty severely. And that was because I was powered on all the time. I didn't take time to disconnect and recharge properly. I was always connected. And so if we're taking your same battery correlation, then like if you're always plugged in, if you charge your phone, if you leave it plugged in after it's fully charged, like it's gonna start draining itself.
Mm-hmm.
Like even a charging dock, if you leave that plugged into the wall, if you leave a battery plugged in to the wall to like recharge, even for like battery powered cars and stuff, anything that's still plugged in after you have that full charge is going to start draining.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So you can be fully charged and still feel drained. They're not mutually exclusive. And as I hear the dogs in the background, that probably, well, there is somebody there. Family glitches. Technical glitches happen, family things happen. So okay, we're gonna dive in more on this because I want to know where when we've got your newsletter up so that we can harness all your good stories for people to find, or however that needs to look on your profile for you to put them out there more. I do also want to talk more about at some point, like all the other work that you're doing that we didn't even get to like dive in on today. So maybe this is like important for us to have a round 2 on this at a later time. Like Definitely. We'll bring you back and like you'll share your progress a little bit and the other cool things that you've been working on. Thank you so much for being here today, Chip. I really appreciate you diving in on this conversation with me because tracking yourself is so important. And we covered so many different ways that you can do that and become more aligned with yourself. So I hope that everybody enjoyed the conversation today. I hope you found a way to relate to at least some of it. Again, if you leave any comments, we will go back and make sure to answer each and every one of them. Tune in next week for another Operation Separation. I've got another amazing guest coming on, and make sure to go check out Shell Station on LinkedIn and YouTube for more ways to separate yourself. Until next week, same Shell time, same Shell Station. This is us saying bye for now.
Bye, everyone.